WNT9 Talk Radio.
Here we go, y'all.
WNT9 Talk Radio, and today we are talking wrongful convictions. I have on the line today a gentleman by the name of Shawn Boyd. Peace, brother. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, brother. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing okay, considering the present pandemic and things of that nature. I also must say that I'm not too happy about what I've discovered in regards to your situation. For those who don't know, well, first let me say this. For those who don't know, right here in America, there are at least 10,000 people a year that are wrongly convicted. And you yourself have been, you did what, 30 years?
Yes, I did 30 years. I was released December 3rd of last year. I was arrested and convicted on July 21st. 1990 was my sentence, and I was arrested in 1989 in June.
Now,
yes.
Before we get into some specifics, the exoneration rate, to my understanding, is like 2,500 people a year gets exonerated, which means they were found to not have done the crimes. And that particular anywhere around that average of wrongful convictions is just horrible, man. It's horrible that we live in a society where people are actually wrongfully convicted and not spend a day, but we're talking about 30 years. We're talking about 30 years of someone's life. And to find out that an individual did not commit a crime, some states, not all states, but some states offer compensation for that. But to me and a lot of other soldiers, there is no compensation for such a loss of time. And I found that talking to you off the air has been so powerful that I wanted to bring you on so that others could get an opportunity to hear your story and actually not just dwell on your story, but you're more than that story. You're more than the wrongful conviction. And I think, that itself speaks volumes. So I would like, if you could, I do know your case is still pending, but if you could just elaborate on, what you can about the case and the things that you're presently doing as a result of all the things that has happened to you. You didn't buckle. You didn't fall under. You didn't lose your mind. You didn't result to going back to doing anything that would cause you to be looked at as someone who was a criminal. So, go ahead, brother.
Well, again, let me introduce myself. My name is Shawn Boyd. I'm originally out of New Jersey, but I served 30 years in the state of New York. My story is like many other stories at that time period, at the height of the crack epidemic, in the late 80s, early 90s, the crime rate was very high in all the major cities. And, I've never denied that I was involved in criminal activity at the time. Selling drugs, basically being a problem and not a part of the solution within my community. And I feel bad about that now that I've become conscious, and I've apologized for that. But at the time, I was a young man, 22, 23 years old, and all I could see was the results, the money, the tangible things. I couldn't really see beyond that. And on June 21st, 1989, it was a situation in Queens, New York, where, again, this is all a matter of public record, where an officer, he states that he was traveling southbound on the Van Wyck Expressway in Queens, which is it's a highway that'll take you through Queens, Long Island. And he said he noticed a white late model Nissan Maxima pulled over to the side with his hazards light on. He said he noticed that there was 2 occupants in the car, and he pulled over to see if they needed help. He said as he exited, first he said he pulled up maybe 10 feet in front of the car. He said when he got ready to exit his patrol car, he noticed the driver of the Maxima exit the Maxima. And at that time, he received a call on his radio. So he turned back to take the call inside of his patrol car. He said that when he heard a loud noise and then suddenly felt pain, he looked and he saw the driver walking towards him, firing. He returned. He emptied his full speed loader. He said, but both occupants in the Maxima were able to get away. Mm. That was his description at that time was 5'11" to 6'1", dark skin, hook part in his head, and gold chain, gold teeth, which was the kind of order of the day in the urban areas as far as the jewelry and the gold teeth is concerned. I've never been 6'1". I'm still 5'9", and I've never been dark skinned. I'm brown skinned, and I've just at that time I was 155 pounds. I'm 53 years old now. I'm still not 185 pounds. So at the time, they just put out a description of the perpetrators. He couldn't identify the passenger. He was only able to give a description of the car, the model and make, and a description of the driver. This was, again, June 21st, 1989. At the time, I had never been in Queens, at least in that area of Queens. Right. And I was a resident in New Jersey, but I frequented back and forth between, Manhattan, parts of the Bronx, in Jersey regularly. A description went out in all the major newspapers in the metropolitan area. And at the time, it was a black and white composite sketch. It did resemble me in the sketch, but it also resembled just about 50-60% of African Americans at that time in the city. Right. They were not looking for anyone from New Jersey. They were not. My name was nowhere on the radar in this incident. There was no reason to be. What had occurred was in my area in New Jersey, which is in northern New Jersey, Bergen County, a small city named Hackensack. At the time, I was already under investigation there for other criminal activity. They allegedly they said they received calls first about me being involved in the crime. I can't say that did not happen because I'm not sure. But what I do know is that they went and got a former crack cocaine addict and ended up telling him that I had implicated him in this crime. And if he didn't implicate me in this crime, that he would be arrested. Now, of course, at the time, I did not know this. And what he initially did on June 28th, he initially implicated me and my stepbrother, who at the time owned a late model white Maxima. I did not own a white Maxima, nor have I ever driven a late model white Maxima.
Right.
So New Jersey authorities got in touch with New York authorities, and at that point, they came to Hackensack to do the investigation. And since I was already on parole, and I was already on investigation for possession and distribution of drugs, I guess New Jersey said, well, let us arrest them first. So they raided my mother's residence and another residence that I was in, and they did not find me. But they did find drug paraphernalia, and they found a weapon. What happened at that time was I had got away and I basically was right in New York the whole time. They told me they just wanted to talk to me about a case in New York. So since I knew that I had nothing to do with this case, I really didn't have no reservations, about speaking to them.
Right.
But what had occurred, they arrested my stepbrother who owned the white Maxima, and surprisingly to them, they found out that he purchased the Maxima on June 24th, 3 days after the incident. So he didn't even have the Maxima when this incident happened on June 21st, 1989.
Wow.
Now, you would think at that point they would let, drop the case, or at least like, wait a minute, this is not adding up because,
right.
You don't have no car.
Right.
And that's what was an initial composite sketch that the officer had given. But no, they still pursued me. Records show that after June 28th, when they found this out, they went back to the informant and he changed the initial statement to say, now instead of saying that me and my stepbrother admitted to him that we did this crime, he said, no, I admitted to him that I did the crime while my stepbrother was just present. That first statement that he made was never shown to the court. It was never presented as evidence to the court. That came later on. They only showed the statement, the second statement that he made after June. He made that second statement on August 4th. After they realized that my stepbrother didn't have the car.
Right.
So I was still in New York at the time. I was still basically doing what I was doing. And on July 21st, they caught up with me and basically changed my life forever. I got arrested in Harlem on 155th Street in Edgecombe, coming out of a parking garage. And I never saw the street again until December 3rd of last year.
Wow.
When I got arrested, they had took me to the 32nd precinct at first, and I've never been arrested in New York. I didn't know what to expect. You hear the stories about the telephone books and the beatings and all that, but this was on a whole nother level. I really experienced some of the stories that I used to hear. And you have to remember, this was around the time when, you had the case with the Officer Byrne in Queens that got shot, with the Pappy Mason Fat Cat fiasco. It was a very tense and heightened time because, the murder rate was high. There was a lot of shootings going on with law enforcement officers. And as I found out later on, they had a lot of pressure to just clean up the streets by any means necessary. Mm-hmm. And this is why you see so many cases now from that period.
Right.
Where guys is serving these lengthy sentences, and they're finding out, 25, 30 years later that they did not commit the crime.
Right.
So, that's basically what happened. But I was put in a position where, I couldn't really get a good attorney at the time because they put a motion in saying that any money that I had received over 5,000, that I have to show where the money came from. So I couldn't even get support from family. You know, everybody, they were scared to even really give me any real finances for, you know, legal fees. So I ended up getting what's called in New York a 18B lawyer. A 18B lawyer is a lawyer. He's a private attorney, but he's given cases by the state. And, you know, the first time I met him, he asked me, he said that he can probably get my sentence to 15 years to life. And I said, listen, man, I'm not pleading guilty to anything.
Wow.
You know, I'm not pleading guilty to a crime that I did not commit.
Right.
So don't come with me. When he was like, well, listen, they're saying in the grand jury that you was identified by 3 people and that the weapon that was used in the crime was found in your mother's house. That's emphatically impossible.
Right.
I said, because I did not commit the crime. How can they have 3 people in the weapon? But what, you know, as I learned over the years about my case, what the grand jury is like, where they do all the dirty work at. This is why you've seen a lot of states now, they're changing the rules of grand jury, because once you bypass the grand jury, it's hard to get those transcripts. And if you find out anything that they did, whether it's lying, outright lies, or anything that they did in the grand jury stage, they tell you, well, you had the opportunity to deal with that during the trial.
Wow.
Like to this day, I've been down, you know, I did 30 years. I never received my grand jury transcripts.
What?
I was trying to get them, and you'd be surprised how many people is in that situation, because they say, well, you had your right to deal with those issues during trial. Now, not everybody,
right.
But when you're dealing with 18Bs and you're dealing with lawyers that you're not paying $50,000, $60,000,
right.
and you don't really know about the legal proceedings, these type of things happen. But what they did to get me indicted, because that's what the grand jury phase is about, getting an indictment.
Right.
That's what they said. They said the weapon that was used in the crime was found in my mother's house, and they said that they had 3 witnesses. Now, by the time I went to trial and they checked the weapon, they found out the weapon was not used that weapon was never used in my trial. They never, the weapon they found was never used in my trial. When I did start learning about the law, and we tried to get our own ballistic expert just to get the weapon, because they was trying to say their records was inconclusive. They claim, New York say they don't have the gun, Jersey say they don't have the weapon. The 3 witnesses turned out to be the one person who they basically forced the former crack addict, and he's changed his testimony over the years. He came forth several years back now, and he admitted that he lied and that they forced him to do it. And it was the officer who, you know, thank God that he didn't die, because if he would have died, I would have never made it out.
Now,
but officer, excuse me, go ahead.
This is you're saying that there was no physical evidence, no gun at all, and it's all based on someone saying that they saw you?
Someone saying that I told him, and then the officer identified me. That's it.
So the individual that is not saying he saw you, he's saying you told him.
First he said me and my stepbrother told him that we did it. And then he changed it to saying I told him I did it, and that my stepbrother was just present at the time.
Wow.
I mean, for people who are not familiar with the judicial system, that may sound hard to believe, and I can understand why, but you'll be surprised how many cases are similar or even worse than that I've come across, that guys who just did not know, like that Central Park 5 thing is real, especially in New York.
Absolutely.
You know, they say that out of the top 7 reasons that you get wrongful convictions, false confessions is actually number 3, and informant testimony is number 4. Those are out of the top 7.
So what are the 7? And for anyone who is not in tune with what they are, I know the first one is eyewitness, correct?
Eyewitness misidentification. I don't have number 2 right now written down, but number 3 is false confession.
Well, number two would be unvalidated forensic science.
Okay. Well, false confessions is number 3.
Right.
Number 4 is informant testimony. Mm-hmm. Number 5 is police and prosecutorial misconduct. Mm-hmm. Number 6 is poor defense lawyering. And number 7 is systemic racism and implicit bias.
Wow.
And out of all of them, with the exception of one, applied to me.
Wow.
New York to this day leads most states, if not all states, in wrongful convictions.
Wow. So New York leads in wrongful convictions in the United States.
New York. New York leads, if not all, most states in wrongful convictions in this country. Yes, New York.
Let me ask you something. You mentioned in one of your lives that I saw, you spoke about an illusion of power.
Yes.
Can you give the listeners an example of what an illusion of power is?
Well, when I made the statement in that context was that a lot of times I'm relating it to my upbringing as youth, we get caught up into, the drug dealing and the money, and we feel that, because of the results from it, the attention, the fan base that we gain, a lot of times we look at that as a form of power. Mm-hmm. And whenever you get that type of mindset, it's really an illusion, because as we know, for those of us who have a belief in any religion, we know that there's always a higher power, than us. So it's really only an illusion of power. But I also, when I got incarcerated and I went through, the different stages, when you're young and you got 25 years, man, you're not really thinking about next week. You kind of put yourself inside the penitentiary, and, you got 25 years to think about that. So your decision making can get warped at times. And I had somewhat, in my early years, I had kind of followed the climate of what I saw around me. So, I got involved in a lot of the violence and, with the drugs, doing some of the same things that I was doing in society. And it's much easier to gain power in the penitentiary than the street, because everyone is in such close proximity. Whereas maybe in society, it's more about finances and money. You can gain an illusion of power inside the penitentiary just with fear, So again, that's just another stage where the way people treat you,
right,
you get that illusion of power.
Okay, now let me ask you this. Well, first we know that the National Registry of Exoneration report, they say that blacks suffer more false convictions, even though blacks represent just 13% of the U.S. population. They constitute for 47% of the actual, exonerations.
For sure.
What after all of the things that have happened to you, what would with the miscarriage, injustice, what would 30 years after 30 years, what would make you, come out and come up with something like, I heard you mention something like called gifts or You have an organization.
Well, I have two.
Okay.
I have GIFT, which stands for Good Initiatives for Troubled Thoughts. Also, Good Initiatives for Troubled Teens, because I'm trying to focus on the youth.
Right.
And I also have I Am Black Innocent, which we are pushing, And well, like I said, I started on the inside, like my last 10 years working with the youth, especially when the gang thing really got big. But I also felt like those of us from the 80s that really, we have to take some responsibility for, what we left behind. Those of us that kind of infected our community with the drug dealings. And because, if you look at it, think about this, they say from the late 80s to the early 90s, over 73% of all crimes committed was due to drug usage, specifically crack cocaine. So let's look at it like this. Take the the crack cocaine away. A lot of the brothers who was incarcerated would have been able to be home, help nurturing and raising those babies, right? A lot of the women who got addicted because of us, they would have been able to be stronger mothers, stronger parents, whereas their children wouldn't have got caught up in the social services or the DIFIS, or the grandparents had to raise them. So we know, those of us that are conscious, we know it wasn't an accident that quickly and that strategically that form of cocaine was infused throughout the major cities in this country. We didn't have the ships. We didn't have the planes. I realized once I got conscious that actually we were all pawns to a bigger game.
Wow. There it is. Yep.
So this is my way, instead of coming out here, angry and bitter, of course I'm still fighting to get my case overturned.
Right.
But I figure instead of coming out here angry and bitter, let me utilize some of the tools of wisdom and knowledge that I gained and try to give back, try to uplift the babies and try to, the same way that we took away, or by infusing them drugs, we have the ability to give back. It may take a generation or two.
Right.
But if we start somewhere down the line, it'll start to grow. If you plant that seed somewhere, you might plant some in hard soil and don't work. You might plant some in quicksand and get swallowed, but you're going to find eventually some good fertile soil. And it's the same thing when we give them back. Some of the youth may not take it. Some of the grown-ups may not take it, but eventually we're going to catch some good soil and that thing is going to grow.
Right. Now, it said that seven times more African Americans, are likely to be wrongfully convicted in the United States than Caucasians. Do you see any relevance to that?
Yes, I do. It would probably take us 20 conversations on why that happens. But one of the things is just that, man, it's easier. Well, they did a survey, and like my situation now, they say that they have something. It's like the racial factor with that. They say it's easier for someone from another race to mistakenly identify someone. Like my case, the officer's white, I'm black. They say in cases like that, when it's race-based, racially based, that it's easier to make a mistake. But I think and I just look at that as one factor. When you're in these major cities and, is more African Americans and Hispanics in the urban areas. So of course, in cases like that, we're looked at, even though now in New York it's kind of you see the gentrification process taking place.
Right.
But back then in the 80s and 90s, that's basically all it was within the urban areas in the major cities. And if you seen Caucasians or any of them, you know they was coming to get drugs, or they was heavily, involved in some other form of criminal activity.
Right.
But I just think the judicial system is broken, and it's broken at the stages that's designed for us. Like I said, I believe, I mean, it's a matter of opinion, but I really believe that it's designed to work against us. If you look at the history of this country, going back to when they call the Black Codes, right after slavery, when certain codes was enacted in order to keep, African Americans working and helping the poor whites or the former plantations in the South. I just think it's a very big business, the prison industrial complex, and they have some same type of black codes, except they're more complex codes designed to keep those of us, certain racial groups, coming back and forth through these prisons. I made a promise to my grandson. I said, "Listen, man, this is where it's going to stop, because my biological father, he died in prison. I did 30 years in prison. My son, my firstborn, he did 8 years for gang involvement. So, I'm trying to stop that cycle of recidivism right there." Right. Because the same way we go back and forth into the penitentiary, I've been up north and I've seen grandsons, great grandsons, that's correction officers for generations. They've been in their family, the father, the mother, the aunts, and the grandfather, all was correction officers. We're providing jobs and livelihoods for them.
Now let me. I want to read a quote right quick from Nelson Mandela.
For sure.
Well, let me say this first. There's a gentleman by the name of Albert Woodfox. You ever heard of him?
Sure. Okay. The brother that did all the time in Louisiana.
Correct. He has been known for saying that freedom is a state of mind. He's done 40 years in solitary confinement, and it was asked of him how did he survive it, and he stated that freedom was a state of mind. So you yourself did 30 years, 3 decades. How would you find that statement relative to you? Because you've come out and you definitely have your head on your shoulders and you have your mind in the right place. So would you agree that freedom is a state of mind?
Yes, I agree that that's one aspect of freedom. But I think that's the most powerful type of freedom when it's in your mind. Is unfortunately that everybody can't reach that stage. I was one of the fortunate ones who, over time, it took me to understand that. Right. And I'm still trying to acclimate myself. And when I speak to people, I tell them now, like, it's more than just a physical type of freedom, And, freedom just to be able to go to the bathroom, or to be able to sit, or just to rest when you want to rest, or even be able to talk, to express yourself. Those are all different types of freedom. But in order to be able to have the mental capacity to say, you know what, I'm here, but this is where my mind, and I can understand what the brother, Mr. Woodfox, is saying, because he did a lot of time, he was in Angola, I read about him.
Right.
And, that was a very serious facility. And he, if I'm not mistaken, from the 70s on up, at a very serious time period. So I've been in special housing units, and I know the housing units that he was in at that time, was probably a lot worse than some of the ones that I consider bad, up in Attica and Clinton, Dannemora, Comstock, and things like that. But what I've learned when you're in these special housing units, those of us who have a certain level of intelligence, we are able to deal with it better. Like the guys who really can't read or write,
right,
or can't really exercise their mind, they have the hardest time dealing with the confinement. But when you know how to utilize your mind and do different things, you stay busy. One of the key elements of being confined in a small space like that is staying busy, setting a program up. So I would depending where I was at, sometimes I would exercise 2-3 times a day. And in between it, I had a certain amount of hours that I would do my law work.
right.
If I was writing short stories, or if I was studying some other class or language or something, I kept myself busy. Before you know it, the night, I wrote my letters. Unfortunately, you have people that don't have family. They can't write letters. You have people that may have family, but they don't have income, so they can't really buy stamps.
Wow.
All those things could wear on you. You have some, and then you just have people that they have a level of intelligence, but they just have mental disabilities going on. So I've seen a number of guys, highly intelligent, talking just like we talking now, and then just shut down, and 2-3 days later you hear him, hung himself. He just was not able to deal with being in a confined space. So it's a mercy from the Creator and a blessing for someone. I salute that brother that was able to do 40 years and endure that, man. Of course, I've been there and I know what it is. And like I said, I know him coming out of Angola in Louisiana at that time period. Definitely had to have a strong mentality.
Well, brother, having said that, I just want you to know that, we salute you because you've done 30 years. And that for many is a lifetime. And so the quote on Nelson Mandela reads, to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances others. I want to read that again. To be free is not merely to cast off one's chains, but to live in a way that respects and enhances others. And the reason that quote stood out to me is because what you've done after, you've been a victim yourself to 30 years of a wrongful crime, wrongful conviction. You've taken the path of respecting others to a level where you would want yourself to do something to enhance, others, such as the youth and others that are listening to you that are adults, that are elders, that may take your advice or need your advice. You're there. And a lot of times, when anything is done wrongfully to someone, the first reaction is hate. I hate you for, putting me through something that I don't deserve. And 30 years is a long time to, come out and feel like, okay, well, I'm not angry. I'm more about, enhancing and helping someone else than I am about, dwelling on, the pain and the struggle and the horrible things that I went through. I totally respect you for taking the position that you take, and I'm sure all of those that are listening feel the same way. So not only brothers like even Nelson Mandela was incarcerated, as we all know, but not only brothers like Albert Woodfox, but brothers like yourself, Shawn Boyd. It's unfortunate that you had to go through those things, but I am pleased. I am thankful that you've utilized those things and actually you're giving back something that people with power never choose to give back. So you're taking what your struggles and your challenges and your obstacles, and you've hurdled over those things, and you're still hurdling over them in your own private life, and at the same time you're out here, trying to enhance people's lives. So again, man, I really respect you for that, and I want to give you a round of applause for that, man, because it's just not enough that can be done or said, for an honorable thing that you're laying out. So I definitely want to have you back on the show, man. We can touch on some other things. I know
appreciate it, man.
I've had you on for 40 minutes, man, plus, and I definitely appreciate it. I do want to bring you back very, very soon. Excuse me, and we can do a video so that people can actually get more of a in tune with your frequency, man. We want to stay with you and support you in your ongoing case, brother. I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate it, man. I really do, and good luck to you. And hopefully, I gave your listeners some insight, and that's what I'm here for, man. And I really believe that we need to mobilize the people, not just African American, but people who believe in the cause.
That's right.
And
that's right.
Help them bring this thing to the light.
That's right. And we need to be clear about that. Though we are, Nubian African American, this is something that affects all people, and we definitely need to organize, network, and communicate. In order to fight wrongful convictions, we must take a stand. And if we are not taking a stand, and I heard you say this on one of your lives, don't wait until something like this actually happens in your own backyard. Stand up. You're hearing what's going on. You're seeing what's going on. Do not close your eyes. Do not walk away. Do not turn away and run from it and think you're going to be okay in the corner. It will affect you some way, somehow. So again, thank you, brother, for being with us today. We're going to bring you back. Much love and peace. Do not hang up.
Okay.
WNT9 Talk Radio. WNT9 Talk Radio.
Here we go, y'all. Here we go, y'all.
WNT9 Talk Radio. WNT9 Talk Radio.
Here we go, y'all.